What if I told you that the backbone of America, the middle class, is in crisis? A statement that may sound alarming, but the reality is that the American middle class, long revered as the pillar of our nation's economic stability, is indeed in a state of upheaval. Let's start by defining who we're talking about when we say middle class. It's not just about income, although that's a significant factor. The middle class is a broad spectrum that encompasses professionals, skilled tradespeople, and service industry workers, among others. It's the teacher who shapes young minds, the electrician who keeps our lights on, the nurse who cares for our sick. It's the people who, in many ways, keep America running. But what's happening to this crucial segment of our society? Well, for one, they're shrinking. Over the past several decades, the proportion of Americans who fall into the middle class has been steadily decreasing. And it's not because they're all moving up the economic ladder. Quite the contrary. Moreover, they're facing an economic squeeze. The cost of living has been rising unabated, outpacing wage growth. Everything from housing to healthcare to education is becoming increasingly expensive. Meanwhile, wages have largely stagnated, leaving many middle-class families struggling to keep up. The result is an increasing number of people who are living paycheck to paycheck, unable to save for the future or handle an unexpected expense. It's an economic reality that's causing stress and uncertainty for millions of Americans. And then, there's the wealth gap, a chasm that's been widening over the years. The rich are getting richer while the middle class sees their share of the nation's wealth shrinking. It's a trend that threatens not just individuals and families but the very fabric of our society. But it's not all doom and gloom. As bleak as the situation may seem, there's always room for solutions. There's always hope. It starts by understanding the causes of this crisis, dissecting them, and then working towards viable solutions. And that's what we're going to do. Understanding the causes of this crisis is the first step towards finding solutions. The middle-class crisis didn't happen overnight. It's a result of decades of economic shifts. Our journey begins in the post-World War II era, a golden age for the American middle class. Manufacturing jobs were plentiful, and a single income could comfortably support a family. However, the economic landscape has changed dramatically since then. Globalization, for starters, has had a profound impact. With the rise of international trade and the opening of foreign markets, American companies began outsourcing jobs to countries where labor was cheaper. This led to a significant reduction in domestic manufacturing jobs, a sector that once formed the backbone of the middle class. Next up, we have automation. Technological advancements have made our lives easier in countless ways, but they've also displaced many workers. Machines, computers, and robots can now perform tasks that were once done by humans. And while this has boosted productivity and profits, it's also left many middle-class workers out in the cold, especially those without the skills to transition into more tech-oriented roles. Finally, there's been a seismic shift from manufacturing to service jobs. These jobs, while crucial to our economy, often pay less and provide fewer benefits than their manufacturing counterparts. As a result, many middle-class families have found themselves treading water, working more hours for less pay. And let's not forget about the wage stagnation that has plagued the middle class for decades. While the cost of living has continued to rise, wages for many middle-class jobs have remained relatively flat. This has put a significant squeeze on middle-class budgets, making it harder for families to save for the future or invest in opportunities for upward mobility. So where does that leave us? With a middle class that's struggling to keep up. Globalization, automation, and the shift from manufacturing to service jobs have all played a role in this crisis. But it's more than just these factors. It's a systemic issue, rooted in decades of economic shifts that have left the middle class behind. These economic shifts have left the middle class struggling to keep up. One of the most prominent features of this crisis is the ever-widening wealth gap. Now let's dive deeper into that. The wealth gap, or the difference in net worth between various socioeconomic groups, has been expanding at an alarming rate. The rich are getting richer, while the middle class struggles to maintain its ground. This isn't simply a matter of envy or resentment towards those more fortunate. It's a serious issue that directly contributes to the middle-class crisis we're discussing. In a healthy economy, wealth is relatively evenly distributed, ensuring that all citizens have a fair shot at prosperity. However, that's not the case in the current scenario. The disparity in wealth distribution has reached unprecedented levels. The wealthiest 1% of the population controls a disproportionately large portion of the nation's wealth, while the middle class, the backbone of the economy, is left with a shrinking share. This wealth gap affects the middle class in several ways. For starters, it limits their purchasing power. With less disposable income, middle-class families find it harder to afford essential goods and services. This in turn impacts businesses that rely on middle-class consumers, leading to a vicious cycle of economic stagnation. Moreover, wealth equates to opportunities. Those with more wealth have better access to quality education, healthcare, and other resources that can significantly improve their quality of life and future prospects. On the other hand, the middle class, facing financial constraints, often has to make compromises, denying them these opportunities. The wealth gap also has long-term effects. It makes social mobility, the ability to move up the socioeconomic ladder, increasingly difficult. The American dream, the idea that anyone, regardless of their background, can achieve success through hard work, is becoming more and more elusive for the middle class. In essence, the wealth gap isn't just about who has more and who has less. It's about the erosion of the middle class, the stifling of opportunities, and the undermining of the values that have long defined our society. The wealth gap is more than just numbers, it's about opportunities and quality of life. While incomes have stagnated, the cost of living has done anything but. It's a tale as old as time itself, but one that has become particularly poignant in recent years. The cost of living, the basic expenditure necessary to maintain a reasonable standard of life, has been accelerating at a pace that far outstrips average wage growth. Nowhere is this more evident than in the realms of healthcare, education, and housing. Let's start with healthcare. Over the last few decades, the cost of medical care has skyrocketed, far outpacing the rate of inflation. From doctor's visits to prescription drugs to hospital stays, healthcare expenses have become a significant financial burden for many middle-class families, and while healthcare insurance can help offset some of these costs, premiums have also been on a steady upward trend, adding to the overall expense. Next on the list is education. The cost of college tuition in the United States has been on a steep upward trajectory for years. Despite the fact that a college degree is often seen as a ticket to middle-class status, the price tag attached to it has become increasingly prohibitive. Student loan debt has ballooned into a trillion-dollar crisis, with many graduates feeling crippled by the financial weight of their education for years after they leave school. And let's not forget about housing. Home prices have been rising steadily, making homeownership an elusive dream for many in the middle class. Even the cost of renting has increased dramatically, eating up a larger and larger portion of monthly incomes. While wages have increased over time, they have done so at a snail's pace compared to these rising costs. The result? Many middle-class Americans are finding it harder and harder to make ends meet, despite working full-time and often holding down more than one job. This disparity between income growth and the cost of living has created a situation where many in the middle class feel like they are simply running in place. The high cost of living has left many in the middle class feeling like they're running in place. This isn't just a crisis for the middle class, it's a crisis for all of America. Indeed, the meltdown of the middle class ripples out, affecting the whole of society in profound ways. Let's start with social mobility. The American dream, that anyone, regardless of their birth, can climb the economic ladder, is under threat. As the middle class shrinks, the rungs of this ladder are growing further apart, making it harder for those at the bottom to rise. The pathway to a better life, once open to all, is becoming increasingly narrow. Political stability, too, is being shaken. The middle class has long been the bedrock of American democracy, a stabilizing force amidst the ebb and flow of societal change. But as this group feels the squeeze, frustration and disillusionment can set in, leading to deep divides and political polarization. The consequences of this can be seen in the increasing volatility of our political landscape. And let's not forget about economic growth. A strong middle class fuels consumption, drives demand, and stimulates innovation. But as the middle class contracts, so too does its purchasing power. This can lead to slower economic growth, less entrepreneurial activity, and even economic stagnation. A dwindling middle class can start a vicious cycle that's hard to break. But perhaps the most profound impact is on our collective psyche. The erosion of the middle class can lead to a loss of hope, a sense that the system is rigged, that hard work no longer pays off. This can fracture the social fabric, leading to a society marked by cynicism and resentment rather than optimism and unity. In short, the middle-class meltdown isn't just about economics, it's about the very essence of the American experience. It's about hope and opportunity, about fairness and justice, about the promise of a better tomorrow. A strong middle class is crucial for a healthy society and a robust economy. Remember, when the middle class thrives, so does America. The middle class crisis may seem overwhelming, but it's not unsolvable. There are viable solutions within our reach, solutions that can bridge the wealth gap, alleviate the cost of living, and ultimately, rejuvenate the middle class. Firstly, let's talk about policy changes. It's evident that the current economic policies are not serving the middle class as they should. We need to revisit these policies and make necessary amendments. For instance, tax policies could be modified to be more progressive, ensuring that the wealthy pay their fair share and alleviating the tax burden on the middle class. Additionally, labor laws could be strengthened to protect workers' rights, ensuring fair wages and benefits. Secondly, education and training opportunities hold the key to upward mobility. By investing in quality education for all, we can equip our citizens with the skills necessary to thrive in today's knowledge-based economy. Vocational training programs could play a crucial role here, providing practical skills for high-demand jobs. Moreover, lifelong learning initiatives could help workers adapt to technological advancements and changing job markets. Lastly, we need to consider economic reforms. This could include implementing a living wage, which would ensure workers earn enough to support a decent standard of living. Measures could also be taken to control the skyrocketing costs of essentials like housing, healthcare, and education. Furthermore, we could explore innovative concepts like universal basic income, which could provide a safety net for all citizens, regardless of their employment status. The middle class, the backbone of our society, is in a precarious situation, but it's important to remember that it's within our power to change this narrative. It's within our power to ensure that the American dream is not just a dream for the few, but a reality for the many. Addressing the middle class crisis will require collective action and innovative solutions. Together, we can build a future where everyone has a fair shot at prosperity. The middle class crisis is a complex issue with deep roots in economic and societal changes. We've delved into the unfolding crisis, the economic shifts that have led us here, and the widening wealth gap that's shaking the foundations of our society. We've also examined the escalating cost of living, a burden that's weighing heavily on the shoulders of the middle class. The effects of this crisis on society are far-reaching, from increased stress levels to decreased opportunities for upward mobility. We've also explored potential solutions, from policy changes to economic reforms, because it's crucial that we not only understand the problem but also actively seek ways to solve it. This is not just about economics. It's about the fabric of our society, the promise of the American dream, and the future we want to build for generations to come. And remember, the strength of a nation lies in the prosperity of its middle class. It's time we paid attention.